Welcome back to Point Blank. Tonight, we put companies to the test and explore some of the strategies and measures that they can implement to help cushion the negative impact of the global economic slowdown.
But before we do that, let's now turn our attention to how the financial crisis has affected the men on the streets.
Well, Razor TV's Daryl braved stormy skies yesterday to gather your thoughts on MOM's new guidelines issued to companies on how to manage their excess staff.
And we'll see just how prepared Singaporeans are for rainy days like this, and we'll also hear their opinion on how companies and employees can ride out this economic storm together.
You know, the government is trying to avoid retrenchment by having, flexible work arrangements, a shorter work week.
That should be the way.
And sending employees for upgrading, of skills and all that.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
It's a good way because that way, people will not be out of job.
Yep.
就是不要吵人家的友谊啦，那少一点薪水是 OK 的咯。
少一点薪水是 OK 啦。
I think the best bet now is to hold on to your job. I really think it's not a good time to switch.
Not a good time to switch?
Yeah,
Are you in a big company yourself?
Well,
you don't have to name it.
I'm in a MNC. I believe in first in, first out. If you join a new company and the company decides to retrench, you're probably the first to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have they retrenched people already?
Not in my company yet, but I have heard of companies who are actually making big retrenchments. And most probably those are the newbies who join, the first ones to go.
Okay. The government is trying to avoid retrenchment by sort of introducing new guidelines. Okay. The new guidelines are flexible work arrangements, shorter work week, and sending employees for skill upgrading. What do you think?
I think the flexible work hours sounds good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. What about you? What do you do?
Student.
Student.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you intimidated about entering the workforce?
I am because it's pretty tough to get a job now.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm in final year, so I'm applying for a job now, so it's kind of tough.
I guess they have to do something.
Yep.
Rather than not, or being seen not doing anything, yeah.
Of course, that is the good proposal, but it's still up to the private sector how are they going to implement.
I think it's a good idea.
Good idea.
Yes.
Okay, some of the ideas were flexible work arrangements, a shorter work week, and sending employees for upgrading.
That's very good. Yeah, very good.
Will there be added measures that you think that the government should take, or
Well, I think this at the times of this shortfall, I think this measure is good enough for them to be attached and then wait for better times. So when the time comes, they are ready also.
I think it's a good decision. Like my company, they only have a freeze on new hire. So there's no retrenchment yet on my company.
Singtel and NTUC, they've come to say they're going to avoid retrenchment.
Okay.
And NTUC even says that they're going to increase and hire more workers. What do you think about that?
I think if I was applying for Singtel and NTUC, it would be a good thing.
That's good, of course.
Your company, are they rehiring more people?
Hard to say because everybody still depends on the economics, you see, how business can be ongoing. If let's say for certain sector, business can be ongoing, of course they have opportunity for more hiring. If let's say those companies are not doing well, how could they afford to go on hiring? Of course, eventually cost cutting. Ultimately, if no choice, still retrenchment is still part of it.
In my company, no. In my company, definitely not, yeah.
Okay.
I don't see it as it being a bright picture in the area of work that I do. I think 2009 is going to be a bad year. I think it's going to be a bad year, yeah.
But several companies like Singtel and NTUC, NTUC just said that they're not going to retrench people, they're going to hire more people instead.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you think this is possible?
It is possible because there's a lot of people who are in a lower education level or maybe the elderly. And those who are probably, there's quite a number who may not mind going into something that they probably get a 60% pay cut or anything like that.
Okay.
No, this also must depends on the various sector performance. So certain sector, they might be doing quite okay.
Let's say if you were working in the company, what would you do to avoid, an economic downturn?
Yeah.
What would you do to avoid retrenchment?
I guess it'd probably be work harder, suck up to my bosses a bit more.
Well, that's the last thing. If I'm capable of doing that, the last thing I want to do is to retrench people. like you say, think of ways to try to reduce the overhead, cut costs, but they're retaining the people. So maybe in the measure like we used to very often say this deduction of salary for a certain percentage for those executive level, and then after that, when the times come, then they pay back, I think that will be a much long-term steps.
Okay, so if a pay cut were to be imposed on you and your company implements a shorter work week as a downturn measure, how would you feel?
I feel neglected.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why?
Because there's many other plans that they can take into consideration, not only by cutting down employee salary.
So what other plans do you think they can take?
They can replan their organization such that they can cut the cost.
Okay, so what will you do to sort of avoid the economic downturn or try to cushion the blow?
Well, it's not what will we do. I'm with an airline and I'm in the marketing line. So we have to constantly be thinking of new ideas or new avenues or new businesses or, tactical promotions. That's basically what we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no saying this is going to work and that's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I think constantly trying new things. But it's hard to say what will work and what will not, because ultimately, it comes down to dollars and cents.
Okay.
Yeah,
so speaking for yourself and not in your capacity as somebody from your company, what would you do with older workers?
I think where older workers are performing or doing, the job that they are doing, I don't see why they have to go. Unless companies are in cost cutting and you feel getting rid of the older ones are, that again, is it discrimination or what, Yeah, so... Yeah.
Sadly, all boils down to dollars and cents.
Yeah, it boils down to dollars and cents. Yeah.
Like what the government said, it's a good way, instead of getting them totally out of the company, maybe, have a talk with them if they are willing to have a lower pay cut, giving them a pay cut, a lower pay, and giving them a lesser work and based on commission or something like that. It might work, but haven't think that far yet.
Okay, so how do you guys plan to survive the economic downturn?
Survive, not really, but so far our forecast is quite reasonable, so I think we're able to sustain for the next year around.
We hear all of you. Okay, we hear that, we don't want to be retrenched. We rather take a pay cut, some of them, than, than be out of a job.
And it's no coincidence that the gentlemen here in this room, they all belong to top level management staff, right?
Yeah, you call the shots, man.
So how much of your salary would you be willing to see being cut or reduced?
I see you looking at Edwin.
Yeah, why me? Here's the funny thing. I think as a company, as an employer, I've never believed in pay cuts, really. I believe that running a budget of an office so tight that you really can't look at anywhere and say, where can I cut? Because it's already been running so lean. I'll tell you a very good example. My chairman, we run a business that nets $20-30 million a year, So my chairman of the group, and he runs about 8 offices. Until today, he takes economy everywhere he flies, and I think these are the costs that, honestly, they don't need to be spent, honestly, you're flying to Singapore to Hong Kong or to Taiwan or China, it's not exactly a very long flight, and I think it's filtered down to all the management within the company as well, that, we don't spend on excesses. We have a nice office, yes, it's in Robinson Road, but it's not a swanky office. It's a small little space that, for that small size, about 1,000 square feet, we can fit 18 people into it comfortably, and I think these are measures that we've taken over the years. So much so that when times like this hit, we don't need to look at a pay cut. And I'll be very frank with you, I think for the 2009 financial year budget, I'm actually looking at pay increases as well, to match inflation rate at least, if nothing else. So I think, look, everybody has to eat. If the inflation keeps going up and you keep cutting out pay, how are you going to eat? I think that's a reality. You want to run a company, you make sure that you're running on a tight budget, for one. Don't spend extravagantly. I think a lot of you read what's happening with Lehman Brothers and you read AIG and all that, and the kind of money they spend on travel and where they stay in hotels. For us, it's everything's on a budget. I don't care. On my holiday, I can spend. right? That's my personal finance. But I think when it comes to the company finance, make sure you run a tight ship from the start so that when times like this hit, you don't think about cutting manpower as any sort of option at all. So I mean, like I said, all due respect to MOM guidelines, it doesn't apply to us at least. True enough, I think there are companies out there that probably apply to. They say excess people. I mean, why do you even have excess people in the first place? I mean, nobody should be in excess. Every employee in a company should be critical to the company, right? At least that's what I think. I don't know if
well, I think it's very prudent in the behavior of management as well as the employee. And I think that is the mindset that we have to inculcate in order to survive any form of crisis. But having said that, if it comes to a point of cutting your salary, as I wouldn't say retrenchment is the last resort, cutting salary is the last resort, and I believe in the concept that you should reward, the person according to performance. But there are times when some companies may have to do in the business they're in the product and services they're rendering, they may have to reduce.
Inevitable to do so.
But cutting salary should also be a form after you've done a lot of other measures, And then on a broader basis, how should you have a very rational and very reasonable way of explaining to the employee that there should be a cut? And I think Singapore has evolved a very flexi wage system. We have learned from the lessons of the long service increment, long service type of salary level that, some of us may have gone through. And so much so that, the amount of salary you get doesn't commensurate with the worth of the job. So in such cases, I think companies should also look at it and explain to the employee that if you want to continue to work, even let's say before retirement, and we want to re-employ you after retirement, there must be a reasonable value to the job so that we can offer and keep the person in the job. Take for example a cleaner. Some cleaner is served you for 10 years or 15 years and is earning $1,500. And you can recruit a cleaner doing the same job, possibly maybe $1,000. So what do you want? You want to say go off, save $500, pay somebody at $1,000, or reduce or enlarge the job scope.
Sure.
But my point here is that, whether senior management will take a bigger cut or a smaller cut, because of our flexi wage system, where there is a certain basic and a certain variable component, usually at the top level, the variable component is usually larger than the basic. Okay, so I think when crisis comes about, you don't make money, then of course gone will be a variable.
So those should be the first things you tweak, the MVCs and all of
right,
that.
that's right,
it should be
that's
built into the structure of HR in the first place, right?
Right.
So Danny, does Gain City practice all this?
Well, we have that built-in structure into the wage, but of course it's about up to about 10% at the moment. Probably it will be increased as time comes, but then here again, I don't think we'll be looking at that cut.
Not even the MVC and all that?
Yes. But we are encouraging our people to work longer hours.
Okay. How does that work? Longer hours?
They will have to stay behind and finish the job.
And not be paid OT.
Yeah.
That's exploitation already.
It's not exploitation, but I think it's as a gesture at this moment of time.
So that they won't be first out, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so besides sucking up to your bosses, that's the next thing you can do. Well, here's a tip you have from Razor TV. Well, stay tuned because on our break, back from break, we'll be talking more about what people are saying on the internet, and you know that they can be the harshest people. Let's take a look.